Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Anna Hausman, and I am on the marketing and product team here at Riverside Insights. And we are so excited to welcome you to a Hear from Your Peers webinar called Soaring to New Heights in Student Achievement. We've got a really exciting discussion today planned for you, and we are thrilled that you're here to join us. My colleague, Vicki Thomas, who is heads up our product team, just lost power and internet, but hopefully she'll be back on shortly to help us with this conversation. So if you see someone pop in, that's who it is. So we are really excited today to host Scottsdale Christian Academy, which is part of the Association of Christian Schools International Group. And we're here joined today with Kevin. Oh, there's Vicki. Hi, Vicki. I just introduced you. I hope that's okay. We are really excited to have Kevin Sealing and Lindsay Bauer here from Scottsdale Christian Academy, and I'll have them introduce themselves shortly. But the topic today is really thinking about how we take student achievement and push students to a whole new level of student growth and achievement. So during a couple logistics before we get started, during the webinar, there's a side panel that you should see where you can enter any questions or comments that you have into the Q&A box. Vicki and I will be monitoring and ensure that your questions get answered throughout the discussion. There are also a number of handouts listed there that we invite you to download and peruse at your leisure. We'll be referencing some of those handouts throughout the discussion, but we want to make sure that you have access to those. This webinar will also be recorded, so if you want to rewatch it or want to share it with some friends or colleagues, we will put this webinar on the website that's listed below on the slide on info.riversideinsights.com/K12PD. All of our other Hear from Your Peer webinars and Hear from the Expert webinars are also on that website, so we really invite you to check that out and learn some best practices from your peers and from experts around the country. So without further ado, let's jump in. So like I mentioned, we are here today with Dr. Kevin Sealing, who's the former administrator of curriculum and instruction from Scottsdale Christian Academy, and then Lindsay Bauer, who's the director of exceptional student services. Kevin and Lindsay, would you mind introducing yourselves briefly, just a little bit about your background, where you're coming from, and what you're doing now?
I'll let Lindsay go first.
Thank you, because he's much more experienced than I am, so it's good that I can start here so it looks better. Okay, hi, I'm Lindsay Bauer, and I'm the Director of Exceptional Student Services here at Scottsdale Christian Academy. I have been in education for 23 years now. I have had the opportunity to be a principal. I've spent many years in the classroom as a teacher, and now I am the director here. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary ed, and my master's is in actually reading instruction. And I am getting ready to start a second master's, actually on gifted and special education, twice exceptionality. So I'm really looking forward to that too. So that's kind of my background. I love data. Data is my jam. So I'm excited to share kind of how we use Iowa Flex, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. So it's nice to meet you all today.
So thank you, Lindsay. Kevin, what about you?
So I have been in education for over 40 years and just recently retired in August. I am enjoying retirement, but I also love helping schools. So I am still consulting with SCA, where I worked there for 7 years as an administrator of curriculum and instruction, and worked very closely with Lindsay. And we were so excited when we had this opportunity to start working with Iowa Flex, and it kind of brought us together. We've had lots of discussions over this software and assessment, and we've loved it. And so we've been sharing it with ACSI over the last couple of years, and we're so fortunate that we were able to share that with you guys today.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on retirement, Kevin. What's been the best thing that you've done since retiring?
Setting my own schedule. So opportunities to walk the dog whenever I feel like it. So
I love that. So as we think about kind of Scottsdale Christian Academy, we have the mission down here. The mission is to maximize God-given potential of each student, preparing them to live lives of distinction. Could you tell us a little bit about the school? What's unique about Scottsdale Christian Academy, and what are your big priorities right now?
Well, I'll just tell you that, ever since I came on board, I just felt the school was quite the little gem located there in Phoenix. Currently, I think they're at about 950 plus students. We service pre-K through 12. It's just quite the opportunity for families to be able to have a Christian education, and also it still offers everything that they need in terms of arts and athletics, and it's really just a wonderful school, and the administration is great, the faculty, hardworking individuals, and just really enjoyed my time there. I do miss that part. I do miss having the daily conversations with all the teachers and the faculty and everything, but I'm learning to survive it because I still get to do these things.
Both of my own children actually graduated from here, one in 2018 and one in 2020, kind of that year of COVID. They shut down the school, but they did this really beautiful drive-through graduation, and the kids felt very valued, and it was very special. It was very, very sweet. So it was neat to be able to see them do that. So my daughter graduated in May of 2020, and then I started working for SBA in June of 2020. So we never had the opportunity to actually be on campus at the same time, but they do come and visit and bring me lunch. So that's very nice. One of the big things that we've actually started doing, and I'm just going to take a second because this is kind of within my purview, but the academic side of it too, under Exceptional Student Services, we do offer a program called our Pathways program, and you'll hear me say that quite a bit so that you kind of know what it is. It's our program within special education, so students that come to our school with an IEP or a 504, or maybe are evaluated while they're current students here, that we can be able to give them intervention, support, and accommodations within our classrooms. And we also have gifted and honor services too, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, and have our students tested to go into those classes as well. So the Exceptional Student Services covers about 20 to 21% of the students here on campus, but we do have anything from AP to honors, dual enrollment for our higher juniors and seniors too that we're working with right now. So we really have a lot of academic programs to be able to meet the kids, meet their needs where they are. So that's actually a really great thing that we can offer, and we're finding that that some of those are actually quite rare. So we're happy to be able to do that.
It sounds like you have a wealth of differentiated kind of academic experiences for students, which I know, especially in a post-COVID world, is essential to ensure that kind of every student's need is met. So I guess to kick us off, how are you all thinking about assessments throughout the year, specifically with all of your differentiated pathways? Can you talk a little bit about your overall assessment program?
So we actually have quite a few assessments we use, so I'll go into this and I'll try to be brief, but again, remember how I said data is my jam, so at some point if you need to just go, that's enough, you can tell me and I will stop. Okay, so for the students that are coming in, we're like our prospective students, we actually do a screening before they come in. Our kindergarten and first grade, we use Brigance screeners, and we found those to actually be very effective, that if they score about an 80 or above, that they come in right around grade level for our students. And then for second grade through fifth grade, we use the Renaissance STAR testing. So we'll do the STAR reading and the STAR math for them to kind of see where they are too. Middle school and high school, we use the RAT, W-R-A-T 5, the RAT 5, and that also assesses their reading, their writing, and their math as well, so that we have a good idea of where they are and how they can come in and get support even when they start on that very first day. So that's actually really nice. Within our elementary, first week of school, we start DIBELS testing, and I know quite a few of you are probably familiar with DIBELS, but if you're not, it stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills, and it really is a great diagnostic testing for us to be able to know where to start with our students. So when we do that the first week of school, we're able to set up placements for anything from our accelerated reading to our Pathways program to be able to start getting some interventions in place for our students. Second week of school, we do STAR Math for 2nd through 5th grade. And then third week, we do STAR Reading. So we actually have quite a bit of data that we're able to use. So when IOFlex comes into place, we do that for 1st grade all the way through 8th grade. And it just finished up actually for us. So we do that a little bit later, kind of towards the end of the 1st quarter, but it gives us a good idea of where the kids are, how that 1st quarter went, and we'll get into a little bit more about what that data looks like and how we also use it. So, oh, and also let me tell you, for our gifted programs that we have, we use the COGAT. So in 2nd grade, across the board, all the 2nd graders take it, and all of our new students take it as well. So, so we're able to have a good idea of where our students are. So if the students, there's 3 domains in COGAT. So there's verbal and nonverbal and quantitative. So if they score above a 97 in one of those categories, then they can go into our gifted program. Or if they score a 90% across the board, then they can go into the program as well. And then also this year we started, it's called the TTCT, which is, and I wrote it down because I want to make sure I say it right. So it's the Torrance Test of Creative Thinking. And this is actually for giftedness in creativity, which we just started this year. So the students that have an average of 90% or above on that can also go into our gifted programs too. So we have quite a bit of things set up, but we also use the IOFlex for some of our classes, for our enrichment classes that we use as well, especially for middle school. We have a program called SOAR that we use for our higher achieving students, and they have to have a 3.8 GPA. They have to write an essay, and then we also look at their IOFlex scores to just make sure when they come into this class, which is like a project-based learning class, that they come in just kind of out-of-the-box thinkers, and they're just ready to go. So we're able to use IOFlex for that as well. And again, we'll get into how we use IOFlex within each of the classrooms, but that's how we use it for placement with an SBA.
Lindsay, you've just listed a significant number of assessments, and typically whenever we're talking with teachers about assessments, and it's like, oh, it's one more test, it's one more test, it's one more test. How have you been able to create, you and Kevin create this culture where it's not one more test, but it is, here's some useful data for you?
Mm-hmm. Kevin, do you want to talk about that, or I feel like I've been doing all the talking?
I would just, no, you're fine. It's good. No, I was going to kind of back up Vicki a little bit and just talk about the fact that even with all the testing that Lindsay talked about, we still found that we didn't have enough. So the prior assessment, the paper pencil that we were taking before, we just it arrived at late spring, sometimes right in the summer. And so we had all this data, and we literally sent it out to the families and say, here you go. And then we filed it away for next year's teacher. And we just saw that was not going to be beneficial for our students, for our teachers. And so we started looking at other assessments, including all the other ones that we use. We looked at the Arizona Academic Standards Assessment. We looked at that. We considered that, but we didn't think that the groups that were going to be assessed were going to compare to what SCA is, a private Christian school. So we really kind of were looking around, and about that time, whoever it was started sending out information about IOFlex. And so Lindsay and I jumped on that right away and started looking at it. And we were so pleased with what we could see that we had the opportunity to assess our kids 3 times a year. We had the opportunity to look at, really dig into the math and reading, but we could do it during the year when the teachers needed it. Mm-hmm. Because before we were sending the students on with the information to the next year's teacher, and it was like, sorry, but it was too late. And so now we had this opportunity where we could dig in right away. And then once we were looking at the dashboard and the availability that we could dig deeper and look at the different domains and look at groups and everything, we just knew that this is what we needed to do. So it's
sorry.
Okay.
But we even had, this is just an example of just how, you get that data right away. Like we would even have teachers that would drop our students off in the technology center, because that's where we would have the students take the test, and they would go back and sit on their computer and watch the data come in. I mean, how fun is that?
And that is something. That is something that I've been doing this for 40 years, and so the last 3 or 4 years we've been doing this. That's the first time I've been able to do that. we could go in and look at student information right away. And then the next thing we know, these teachers by grade levels were looking at it across their grade level, and then we started looking at it by subjects, and it just became a tool that we saw so much value in. And so we would use time to, we had so many allotted professional development days on our calendar, and so that is when we would use that time to then work with our teachers to introduce them to the dashboard. We would use the videos that were provided by Iowa Flex to let our teachers walk through and see that. But then Lindsay and I would do small group sessions, one-on-one sessions, whatever we could to benefit our teachers so that they would felt comfortable. And then every year we have new teachers, and it was great to see the former teachers or the current teachers working with our new teachers and showing them how to run the dashboard and everything too. So a lot of peer-to-peer was happening, but mostly we used the opportunity for professional development days to really get our teachers involved and dig into that data.
Because I will say too, and if you're not using Iowa Flex right now, it's very user-friendly, that data that you receive. And so it's easy to explain. It's easy for teachers to be able, I mean, you can, and again, we'll go into this a little more later, but I mean, there's so many different domains and things that you can click on to get so much information. And it's very easily, you know, it's very user-friendly, which is very nice too.
There is nothing more rewarding as a teacher than getting to show your student right away, like how much you've grown, or you know how great of a job you've done. So that's awesome. One quick question before we move on from this slide. A lot of districts we've talked to, or schools that we've talked to, have are using the same type of assessment for both benchmarking and progress monitoring, or they're kind of they're saying we're either going to progress monitor or we're going to do benchmark testing, but we're not going to do both. Have you found value in doing both, and why did you introduce an additional benchmark assessment?
Well, I think it's like I said earlier, for so long we waited on the data that was out there, but by the time it came, our teachers were off for the summer and everything else, and so this was just a great opportunity to take immediate feedback and have them sit down and look at it. And so we saw that right away we had an opportunity to set benchmarks, so we could pick how many times we wanted to do the assessment, and we just realized that why not test them at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and then at the end of the year, so we can actually have 3 benchmarks where we can look at their progress. I was just going through some of the stuff today as we were preparing, and I saw comments from the teachers that we have been keeping over the course of the time, and they said just the opportunity to see growth from August to May is amazing, whereas they don't get to see that usually until the end of the year. And here was an opportunity with immediate feedback where they could say, look at this guy actually is growing in this concept and he continues to grow. So that's just been such a plus, I think, and it probably makes our teachers feel more confident in the sense that they can do 2 things. They can look at data and say things are going in the direction they want, or they can take a step back and say, I can look at this and see, is there something else I need to do before I move forward on working on another concept?
I can also say too, and I'm thinking of, I'm going to go back to Dibbles for just a second. I don't think that that those 2 assignments clash. I actually think that they work very well collaboratively, because because the same thing with Dibbles, it's 3 times a year. There's 3 benchmarks throughout the year, and you can do progress monitoring with it as well. But I feel that it's assessing different things. So it's really giving them the opportunity to dig deep into phonemic awareness or into phonics with Dibbles, when maybe more on the other side of Iowa Flex, it's looking at key ideas and details, and more like the fluency and the comprehension, the vocabulary as well. So to me, it's neat for the teachers to be able to have both of that data together, because they're able to really be able to see where exactly, again, going back to kind of the need of the student, right? Like, is it a phonemic awareness thing? Is it a key idea and detail thing that I've learned from the Iowa Flex, from looking at that domain? Like, just being able to get a good all-around picture of the student, to be able to know how to move forward with them too.
That's great.
And I want to jump in here and talk about something, because Lindsay and I were fortunate that when we started this process, we were in the tech room watching our students. And one of the beautiful things about Iowa Flex, it was adaptive. And so when we remember giving those paper pencil tests, every student gets the same paper pencil test, and you just keep moving through. But here, we're sitting there, and we're not sitting, we were always moving. So we were watching the students, and they would all begin at the same time, and then sooner we would see the screens changing because the test was adaptive. And then all of a sudden we're looking at, and we have a room full of kids all at different places on the test. And then we're also watching them how they think, because if they have an opportunity to write things on paper, we're starting to see, and we actually collected samples of how they were calculating math, and we were just amazed at what we were watching in terms of seeing how our students were thinking mathematically, watching how they were working through the reading, and just watching how every student has this opportunity to be assessed individually. And I think that was just a huge plus for us. And we just started thinking, that's when we first started saying, this is really something. This is something that's going to be so useful for our students and our teachers.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Vicki, you want to take this one?
Okay, so we're talking about data analysis and discussions, and you've shared a little bit about how excited you get with the data, but can you share with us some structures you might have in place to review the data? How are you getting this information out to the teachers? That there was the immediate, we're acting on it, and there was the teachers are talking about it amongst themselves. And then how do we move forward with the data? How are you making decisions when you're using this?
I can talk a little bit about just our first year experience. That this was something that Lindsay and I, we noticed that our students were doing really, really well in math. And to the point where we actually thought they were doing too well. And for a while there, we were questioning whether or not the data we were receiving was correct. So we actually called you guys and said, can we please have a meeting? And you met with us during the summer, and you went through the data with us, and you said, no, the bottom line is your students are really doing that well. So we had adopted a new math program and had been working with it for a couple of years. And when we adopted it, they told us, your first year, everyone's going to struggle. The teachers, the students, everyone's going to really struggle with this math program. By year 2, your teachers are going to get it. Your kids are going to start getting it. By year 3, they're going to take off. And you guys are going to be just amazed at how well your students are going to do. And it's going to carry through all the way from elementary up to middle school, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we were seeing was that we came in with the Iowa Flex about the time they were going into their second year, third year, and we were starting to see this is exactly what the program told us was going to happen was happening. So we had Iowa Flex to validate. At first, we didn't believe it. Sorry, but we didn't.
I remember that
it was
conversation.
Almost too good to be true. Yeah, it was almost too good to be true. And then we realized, wait a minute, this is how it is. And so this coming year, again, we took on the challenge that they were looking at ELA. And so we use that, and then what we do, which is typically around April, so we've already gone through 2 testing assessment time periods, we had them focus on ELA. And so what they did was they looked just at the ELA results, and they looked for growth and everything else. And again, going through that, it's helping them now build a baseline with newly adopted programs so that they understand what to expect moving forward, and they can set their goals of what they want to work on. Again, I was looking at some of the data this morning, and almost every teacher from grade 2nd through 7th grade was saying, my kids are doing really, really well until it comes to key ideas and key details. And that was across the board. And so now we have that information, so that will help them make decisions then as they move forward in planning for this coming year, or also for things they need to do. So that's really important. That's one of the things we do. We do what we call data digs in April, but they can do any kind of detailed analysis with the dashboard after any assessment that they want to. And I'll let Lindsay talk about how sometimes they use that in some of her small groups and in pathways.
Well, and it actually has been nice too, and Kevin touched on this a little bit too, being able to have now a full 3 years of data And seeing that longitudinal data that you get to is the most beautiful thing. I'm very visual, so being able to kind of see how that's done, seeing again the growth of our students too, is really an incredible thing. So when I'm looking at the students that are maybe within our Pathways program, it gives us the opportunity, like we are able to dig deep into that data and say, is this intervention working? Okay, so when I'm just thinking about that small group, but is this actually working for our student? And we can say, yes, it looks like that this intervention is working with this student, but look, this student did not make as much growth, because again, you can see it right there on that data. Okay, then we're gonna go back and we're gonna see what we can do to be able to bring in some more support for that student too. So just being able to have that every time that the benchmark was done, we'll sit down and we go over that data student by student and just make sure, are there any kids that we see are not making growth? And even if they're not in our program, are there any kids that are not making growth, and why is it? Because honestly, it could be anything from a trauma at home, something social emotional, something where interventions are not working, or something where maybe they need a couple of accommodations in class. So we just want to be able to create the support around them that they need. And the beautiful data that we receive from this allows us to be able to do that appropriately.
Well, and I think it's also interesting that, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to touch on, I see on the slide there that you have a visual of our analyzing data report, and it's a very simple document, and I think it's going to be included in your handouts. And that's what we look. That's what we do. We do in April. So they work together as grade level teams. They go through. They can analyze their own work as a class, or they can do it as an entire grade level. And what they do is they just basically fill that out. And what it says is, what is the current trends that you're seeing in your class? What are some of the strengths? What are some of the things that you want to work on? And what are things you're going to celebrate? And then they put together a very small action plan saying, a couple of action statements. These are what we're going to work on. And so everyone is required to turn those in every year. And so we give them time to work on it in April, but they have until the end of the school year to kind of turn it into the curriculum instruction person so that they can also see what it is. And that's where we start finding that there's common trends going on throughout the school in terms of either whether it's ELA or math, or else we also see if there might be some gaps that we need to look into. So that's the one piece that we have asked our teachers to do. We tried to make the form as simple as possible. And now, in the first year, we had a senior math teacher model it for them, and then we had a session where she worked with them, and then we could also work with them individually if they needed it, and we kind of walked them through. I've had teachers in my office. We just sat down and looked at the dashboard together and talked about it. They wrote up the form and turned it in. So we tried to make it as user-friendly as possible.
So for those attending the webinar, that's over in the handout section on the right-hand side of your screen. You can pop open that handouts, click on that little arrow, and it's the SCA data analysis and report data response sheet. Couldn't see the entire title. I just think it's beautiful that you've got teachers that are willing to talk about their test scores amongst each other, that they're sharing information. A lot of times we see that, these are my scores and I don't want you to look at them. But the openness leads to more progress, and you can overcome the challenges when you do it as a team. You're doing it as an individual. It doesn't work that well. It's not a great situation. So it's really nice to hear how this is working for you guys. What's next, Anna?
So the next topic we wanted to kind of talk about with you all is how do you communicate some of this with parents? I think that it's always a tricky situation when you're talking to parents about test scores and assessments and the purpose of assessments, and especially because you all have so many assessments. How are you communicating what each individual score means and how parents can support their students as well?
Well,
do you want me
I'll
to
start, Lindsay? I'll start. You can you finish up. So I'll just kind of give you the history of we used the first year basically just to learn how to use the system, to look at the information, and we sat on it. And we just wanted to just process what that looked like. And in year 2, when we started getting those longitudinal reports and we're starting to see openly see trends with the students, with classes, et cetera. It just kept growing. So by year 3, as an admin team, we really talked about the fact now we have to get this information out to our families. And so they were used to getting some kind of a report with former assessments that we did. And so we went to look for a parent letter, and we asked around, and we learned that there wasn't really one that was out there that we could use. And so we just created our own. So we went through all of the material that you guys put out there, the marketing material, that we watched all the videos, we looked at everything, took notes, and we tried to compile that into a very short one-page letter, because we realized that nobody's going to want to look at anything longer than probably a page. And so we had to write 2 parent letters. One was for the grade 1, because that report was very different than the other one, and then with the grades 2 through 8 to have the same content in their letter. And so we were able then to create that, but we also felt like we can't just throw that out there. We had to pilot the letter. So we chose a grade level, and what happened was Lindsay and I met with the teachers who were going to do that. We gave them a copy of the letter and their students' reports, and we said, this is what our goal is. But to prepare them for what questions might be asked, we just randomly pulled different tests from that grade level, and then we presented each of those reports to the teachers and say, what do you see here? And we talked about what might be some of the trends, what might be the reason why this test went down or up or whatever. And we just did a lot of role playing and talking as a parent, as a teacher. And then once we felt confident that they were ready, we rolled it out during parent-teacher conferences. Then we rolled it out again with the parent letter in spring, and we really felt like the feedback we got from the parents and the teachers, and everything was positive. So at that point, we made the decision, we're good to go, and we sent them out last spring. And to this moment, I don't know if we have had any negative response from any of our families. So I'll let Lindsay move on. There's more.
Well, that was most of it. I was going to say that part too about the responses from parents. So one of the things we really wanted to make sure with that pilot group of people, we wanted to get those responses back so that we knew how to respond when we kind of did our whole rollout the next year. But what we were finding is that the results, again, because it was very easy to read, and with the letter that went out to them as well, that they really understood where their child was at that moment. So we didn't get any negative feedback as far as, the testing or why it was being done or what was being done on the test. I mean, really, they from what we've heard from parents is that the material and the data was very valuable, and that everything that we received from the teachers and from the parents was very positive.
Are you all providing any sort of instructional recommendations to parents? Like if depending on how their child is performing, how are you then coupling that with support strategies at home?
Well, we actually, and it's funny that you bring that up because I just had a conversation with a teacher yesterday about this. But what we were talking about as well too is that sometimes this is maybe where the first time where we talk about intervention, or we start to talk about tutoring, or maybe it's something where over a couple of years we've collected enough data where, okay, now we're starting to see that maybe we need to move forward with a full evaluation for the child. So it gives us a good idea of it's great data to be able to move forward to. But I was talking to the teacher yesterday just specifically about, like, she was showing me a student's test score and just saying, like, it looks really like just key ideas and details is where this one child was having difficulty. And so we had just talked through some ways, like, what do you do in your classroom for this? And she had all the ideas. Like, there are things that she's definitely doing within her classroom as well. So we just went through each domain and just talked about, like, what are you doing in your classroom already? How can you offer support for this domain or this domain? And again, things she was already doing within her classroom. But it actually made me think too that it would be great to sit down with them, and I wrote it down because once it's in my head, it's going to be done. So, I mean, to in the future, be able to sit down with the teachers too, and just go domain by domain and just talk a little bit about different interventions and support that you can offer them within the classroom, even if their child is scoring low on any of the domains in math or in English too. So it's great the way that the Iowa Flex breaks that up so that we can be able to see that too. And even some of the examples that they give, like your student is showing us right now that they're low in this, and this is what you can do. I mean, so it's great to be able to have that data to be able to move forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So you've kind of shared with us how teachers are using this data in their classroom and how you're helping them, Lindsay, to use that data and change their instruction to meet the students' needs. Can we talk a little bit now about how we're using the assessment data to do decisions at the school level when we're talking about program placement or the curriculum decisions that you were referring to earlier?
So I think one of the things, we looked at was that we talked about the incident with the math, was the fact that we were really looking to see if our math program was basically delivering what they promised, and we determined based on that it was. But at the same time, what I've seen is that when our math teachers are working with the Iowa Flex, I have a page here where I was looking at an 8th grade teacher was looking at that, and she looked that it tells you where students are at in terms of performance. And so her comment on her data dig was that she had 20 mid-performers. And so her challenge then was going to take those 20 mid-performers and try to raise the level so that by the time she assessed them again in the spring, she was hoping to see that number switch from like 20 to maybe 10. And so that is what I'm talking about, is that is how it's used to drive decisions even in the classroom. And when you think about it, they couldn't do that with the paper pencil test that we were taking at the year that sometimes expand, and they would be in their seats working with the teacher for a week at a time. And now the way we have worked the schedule, we use 2 different labs. We have our teachers I don't know what we call them. Lindsay, help me with the word that we use to when they help with the assessment. We assign
proctors, right?
Proctors, sorry. Yeah, we have proctors at each grade level, and then we have so that they are able to help with the assessment. And so it really runs well now. We're into at least our 4th year with this, and it's just an opportunity for us to take a look at. And like Lindsay said, I love the fact that they can go back to their classrooms after they drop the kids off, and they're starting and looking at the information right away. As a large group, like I mentioned, when we were looking at an ELA adoption, we wanted to build some baseline data, and so we went in, and that was what's interesting, was that we saw that teachers were saying the same thing. Here are some of the domains that we're seeing that our students are having issues with. So one of the other handouts that I think we have is that when we started talking about the domains, our teachers were like, okay, what does that look like? And so we kind of put together a 1-page sheet at each grade level for reading and math, the domains, so that when they're talking about, when you look at the way that you can look at the data on the dashboard, it will immediately show you which domains you are talking about, and then you can break it down and see which concepts. So we developed that for teachers so that they were able to go in and take a look at each individual domain, and then concept by concept. And so those were how decisions are being made in the classroom. We look at it in terms of how we're going to do that as a school. And then we can also look at how we're seeing trends within subject area from grade 2 all the way up to grade 8. And we notice that as our students are going through the program, our math program, it impacts then what happens when they leave from grade 8 into the high school classes. And we're getting great feedback from the high school department, that our kids are being better prepared for math. And we have all this to validate. We can bring this information to our administrative team, to our teachers, and say, look, this is how we're doing, or these are the areas that we can use improvement in. So it's just a way for us to have constant discussions about what we see.
Well, and again, it's so beautifully done. Again, I'm going to go back to kind of the visual side of it, because when we received, our paper and pencil results in the past, I mean, you'll receive it for your students, but this is if you don't use Iowa Flex, like if you see the bar graph that's on the page right now, and I'm sorry, it's really small, but off to the right-hand side where it says operations and algebraic, what does that say?
Algebraic thinking.
Okay, thank you. So what you can actually do even with that, like you see those bars and you see where it says low right there, you can click on that low and it's going to bring up the names, the literal names of the students that may be struggling with that one concept. And I mean, you can of course do this with paper and pencil, but it's going to take you hours to be able to go through that data and be able to come up with the results that you can come up with with Iowa Flex in seconds with this too. So you could go through each domain and click on your highs, and see, okay, I see that these students understand this concept. So what enrichment can we give moving forward? So when we're talking about like differentiating your own instruction within your classroom, it just gives you a good idea right where your kids are at in each one of those domains, so that you know how to maybe change your instruction to be able to meet the needs of those kids too. So that's a really great thing that Iowa Flex does well.
So what Lindsay's talking about is there is that middle screenshot. The Iowa Flex dashboard is very interactive. So for instance, you can see that the fourth bar over from the left is highlighted, it's green. That means that we've clicked on that, and that's showing all of the students that are in level 4. Well, you can now go over to that other side and click on some of the domains, and then for instance you could see here are my level 4 students that are performing very high or very low or in the middle, and then you can do that to kind of group your students so that you can say, these are my students that are at a level 4 that are performing low in operations and algebraic thinking. I've got that group. This is the group that I'm going to target, so that we can see if we can move them from that low to that mid, from that level 4 to that level 5. I love the Iowa Flex reporting. It is so fun to get in there and just click and see what you're going to find. It's great to play with.
Well, speaking of reports, would love to dive a little bit more into what specific reports have been most impactful for you all. Like as you're thinking about making larger decisions for school, whether they're curriculum-based or programmatic-based, or more individualized, decisions for students or for a specific classroom, how are you using and interacting with these different reports to make some of those decisions?
Well, I think one of the ones that's truly beneficial for us is the one that probably is on the left there, the narrative report. When you have 3 years of data to look at, it's just where you can start seeing trends even within students. You can see that some students might do very, very well in August. It's new, it's exciting, they do really well, and then they go through, but at the same time, maybe it's because it's adaptive, they might be working towards a specific area, and then suddenly that information that they're working on becomes a little more difficult, and we see that, but then we also see where then in the spring, where they've covered all the concepts now that they're working on, then that bar graph shoots across the screen, and it's just so telling. And we started seeing trends where, this is interesting, when Lindsay and I were in the room, we also saw trends that when the teachers were in the room with us, the students scored just slightly better than when they left the room and went back to the room to watch it. So the students were more attentive when their teachers were there. The other thing, I just read this morning, that one of the teachers said she went and looked at and she checked off the names of her students who were participating the most in her class. And those students who were constantly participating scored higher on the Iowa Flex than those who were not participating. So they're starting to look at this and seeing trends themselves. And that's what we love about the dashboard and how user-friendly it is, that they can start finding their own trends without even us telling them what to do.
I agree with that too. And again, I mean, if you even just look at the one in the middle, the longitudinal report down at the bottom, it shows a list of students and it actually will show their growth. So the square is where they start and then the circle is the winter benchmark, and then the star is the spring benchmark. So you'll see, are they making growth? Just even compared to those three, again, such a beautiful visual to be able to see, where is my child going, right? So if you look even at the third one down, and it's very small, I think maybe her name is Grace, but it looks like started out the year strong, and then wow, by winter it looks like made massive growth. And then if you're looking at that star at the end of the year, it looks like she started to come back a little bit. So then it's kind of like the why, right? So that's when we can actually get into things like the intervention, or is it the behavior in class? Are they paying attention in class, or is it something at home? Again, something where we can say, this is so clear to me that I can look at this right away and see that they're not making that growth like they were before. And then you can get into the whys of it too. So it's beautiful to have that data as well.
And I think, teachers recognize that every year is different in terms of students, but they can also go in and look at, because they can go in and see that even though they're teaching the same material, they may not have the same kind of scores that they had the year before. So it gives them an opportunity then to reflect on whether or not, what are some things that particular class has to work on compared to the class I had last year. So they can even do year-to-year analysis on their, just by doing this. We're just finding there's just so many benefits and flexibility within this program that's why we thought we wanted to share everything with you guys today.
It's amazing. It's so actionable, and I think that's what makes it really compelling as a teacher, is that you can walk in and walk out with like key strategies or takeaways that you can implement immediately in your classroom.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about triangulating the data. You've got many different assessments that you're using, and like you said before, you're having to use these because there were gaps, but now you've got a complete picture. How are you working with all of these assessments to build this holistic view of the child?
I'll let Lindsay start this one. The one slide we talked about yesterday.
Well, we were talking a little bit too about, like seeing the growth as well too. Once you have a full year, and again, we now have 3 full years, like being able to see this growth too. And I'm specifically thinking in my head right now of a student that may be getting some intervention, maybe in our Pathways program. So maybe we're at a point where we need to start creating exit goals for our students. So we actually use Iowa Flex for our exit goals. So it may just be, as we're starting to see this trend of growth, this is where we would like to see you by the winter or by the spring, or, so it again, it's able just to give us some data of how to be able to create those goals for them to get them back to where they don't need accommodations or maybe even intervention at that time too. But again, also having that data too, it gives the other side of it when we're talking enrichment, or our students, our high level achieving students, or our students that are just making slow growth throughout the year, but they are making growth. Like, let's just praise that, right? Like, it's such a big thing to know that that what we're doing is working. So when we go back even to the beginning of what Kevin was saying, when we adopted that math program, and really seeing how the kids are working through this and how their sweet little minds are working too, it's neat because this program is even showing us it may be the same problem on the screen, but they figure it out probably 5 different ways on their paper. Like, it's neat to be able to just see how their brains work, right? But we know, and what we had talked about before, is that our math curriculum's working. I mean, it seems to be a really solid program, and our kids are just really getting these wonderful critical thinking skills. So now we can really focus a little more on ELA right now. And as we, and we're getting ready to adopt a new curriculum for that too, to be able to start to catch the trends for that too. So when we're thinking about like our whole school, we will have, again, this data that we can go back to say, is this working? Is this doing what we needed this to do? Are the kids able to find key ideas and details? And I'm sorry that domain's in my head. It's just the first one, so it always pops in my head. But just to be able to
It's the one that showed up all the time.
Right, yeah. So just to be able to have those skills, and is our curriculum able to meet the needs of the kids when it comes to that? So are we as a school having that trend of growth with what it is that we choose to adopt too. So it actually helps, again, our entire program as we move forward with the data that we receive from this.
So I think we are quickly running out of time, which is crazy, but our last big topic that we wanted to hit on was key insights. So I know we've talked a lot about data. We've talked a lot about the reports that you're using, the decisions that you're making, but specifically, what are some of, why specifically Iowa Flex? Why did you add this to your assessment portfolio, and how do you take some of this information and really walk away with some key insights that you're then able to use to make instructional and programmatic decisions?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll start and I'll let Lindsay be the closer. So, I mean, when we started looking at this, one of the things that we thought was huge was that we can do this all in a single class period. We at the elementary level, we will test them in reading one day and math another, and so it gave us so much flexibility in the schedule. We had to do some strategic scheduling with the labs that were used, but then now in the middle school, we're assessing them in a classroom with a proctor and then one of the campus administrators. The fact that we could just look at student growth over time, over a month, over a year, and longitudinal, that was just a huge benefit for us. The fact that we could really focus on reading and math, I mean, basically those are the two subject areas that we need data repeatedly on, and so we're able to do that. The whole idea that we can narrow down to groups of students, like Lindsay said, we can pick and choose where students are in terms of high or low, or where they need help, or what domain they need help on. You do that with a touch of a button. That has been just so beneficial. And that we get to choose what we want to assess our students on. We can look at the certain domains. We can focus in, we can zero in on. Those are things that you can do it without having to spend a lot of time. It's right there at the touch of your fingers. And the fact that it was adaptive tests, so that we have students who are they're not all taking the same test at the same time. That was huge. And the fact that Iowa Flex is a trusted name. I'm from Minnesota. All of our kids took the Iowa Flex when I took the Iowa Flex. And so this was they had that long ago, way before everything else. And so that's just something that it was a trusted name. And so we didn't even have to worry about that. It was just something that we knew that this was a good measurement that we could give our students.
I also took Iowa testing growing up too. So, but I would say you're going to be really surprised by my answer. I know you will, but it all comes down to me, like the data that we receive, but also just how beautifully done it is. I mean, really what we receive, how specific it is. I mean, to each student, that you can click on their name and just get so much information about how they're learning and how they're growing, or if they're not growing and what we need to do. Like it just is able to, and right away. I mean, Kevin said that. We've said it all along. We've probably said it 10 times in this webinar. But just to be able to have that real-time data is really so incredibly important, because, I mean, you could start on interventions the next day. I mean, how exciting is that to be able to do that instead of having you get the material over the summer, you get all the data over the summer, and it's like, okay, well, these are my new students, and what do I do? Like, that's really such a wonderful thing. And like I said, it's very easy to use. That's a great thing too, user friendly. I mean, so even for our teachers that may not enjoy being on technology or computers all the time, we don't have a lot of questions when it comes to this. So if it's something where you're an administrator, you're listening to this and saying, are we going to have to do all the I mean, you will have to do a training so they understand how to do it, but I can tell you that it's very user friendly, and it'll be easy for them to go back and click on all the data and find out a lot about their students without a lot of help. And we've heard that a lot from our teachers too. I mean, they value Iowa Flex immensely.
Awesome.
It's so funny whenever we
Lindsay said too. I was just saying, just what Lindsay said too, is that once we train that group of teachers, when we hire new teachers, they're able to train the new teachers, and it's like we're out of the mix, because it's just so user friendly that they're able to do that. So I wanted to throw that in there.
Mm-hmm. when we first launched Iowa Flex, we had a marketing campaign, and we said it was fast, flexible, and familiar. And then Lindsay just kind of iterated all of those questions. We used the Tootsie Roll Pop. How many bites does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop? And that's how fast you were done with the Iowa Flex. So.
Yeah. And I think a teacher's job is so much easier with the right data. Like if a teacher has the right data points, then a teacher can maximize student growth. And I think partly why teachers have gotten so burned out, and from experience got so burned out, is like there's so much data coming in, but it sounds like you all have done a really nice job really helping teachers understand the purpose of each assessment and how you're going to use that assessment to maximize your students' growth. Well, we are quickly approaching the top of the hour, but any last minute thoughts, Kevin, Lindsay, Vicki, to wrap us up for today?
I guess all I'm going to say, it was an answer to what we were looking for, and we would not go backwards again. Everyone was a little nervous about online testing, thinking, we would have to invest a lot of money and everything else, and all we had to do was grant access to the website for our students. And we use one lab for our elementary, and we use 3 classrooms because we have access to do that. And they take them on Chromebooks and other devices, and it has not been a huge investment for us because we already had all that. And the actual time to train teachers, when we look back over the course of 3 years, I mean, it wasn't as time consuming, and the benefits I think that they see, it just was worthwhile. And I'm hoping they feel the same way. I know Lindsay and I do, and so we have been such strong supporters of this program, and because we can see so many benefits for our students. I love the fast, flexible, and familiar. It's true.
Yeah. And I do have to say too, just a shout out to Riverside Insights, because anytime that we've had a question, they've answered us right away. Like on their chat, I mean, I would chat like sometimes even during a test, and they could give me an answer right away. Or if we emailed, we know them by name, they know us by name, but it's been, but they're wonderful and really have been great at getting back to us every time. So they're a wonderful program to work with too. If you have any questions or any technical help, I mean, they're very knowledgeable and they did a fantastic job.
I want to concur with that, because even when you're setting up your data files at the beginning of the year, once they look at them, they give you feedback on if you have anything that's out of place or missing. They're so quick to let you know, so that if you send your files in on Thursday, you're up and running and ready to go by Monday, testing all your students, and their customer service has been superb.
Customer experience teams are just amazing. They really are. So we'll pass along those compliments to them. Vicki, any last minute closing thoughts on your end?
Not really. I mean, Lindsay and Kevin have really described Iowa Flex and, how you can use it in your classroom, in your school, use it for validating your curriculum. I will say it is my favorite assessment that we offer. And, I hope that this webinar has been helpful.
Yeah, amazing. Well, as we wrap up today, please, for the audience members, check us out on social. Follow us on LinkedIn, on Facebook. We are always posting upcoming webinars and new content that we're creating that will hopefully help you out. But Kevin, Lindsay, we are so thankful for your time today. I think I learned quite a bit from this discussion, and really just love your passion and enthusiasm for the work that you're doing. So we can't thank you enough for coming on to share your insights with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, and with that, I'm going to close this out. But,
thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody, and we hope to see you on an upcoming webinar soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.